Hello, this is Mark Hubbs with Gone Bullet Molds. Several months ago I bought a reproduction Sharps carbine. This is the Garrett Sharps. They were only made for a few years and it's considered the most historically accurate of all the reproductions, all the way down to the Lawrence, a functioning Lawrence pellet primer system. I was disappointed when I got it when I found that there was no commercially made bullet mold that made a correct or historically correct bullet for a Sharps carbine. So I set out to fix that. And Gone Bullet Molds now produces molds for the Richmond Laboratories Sharps carbine bullet. And if you stick with us, I'll tell you more about this bullet and why I chose this one, and also how to make historically correct paper cartridges for it. Most of the molds and bullets for reproduction Sharps today are based on this bullet, which is the ringtail Sharps. But as you can see from these examples, none of them are true matches. They're just inspired by that original design. Now that's not to say they're not good bullets. They may shoot very well. They're just not accurate, historically accurate copies of the original bullets. So I decided I did not want to do another ringtail bullet because there are so many out there. I considered this bullet also. This is the new Sharps that was introduced in 1859. It was the most common of the war, but it's mostly associated with linen fabric cartridges. And I know that most people would have difficulty trying to replicate that type of cartridge. That led me to this bullet, which I had in my collection already. This is a bullet that was made at the Richmond Laboratories, probably in the last half of the war. And I like it because it has a very long heel, which will allow a lot of surface area to attach a paper cartridge. Here's a scan out of the book Round Balls for Rimfire by Dean Thomas, Volume 4. It has a couple of examples of the Richmond cartridge, and it was a paper cartridge with a folded tail, just like a musket. Also, while searching the internet, I found this. This Sharps cartridge was made by Ely, which was a British firm, who also made infield ammunition, and it was imported through the blockade along with all millions of rounds of infield ammunition during the war. And it looks surprisingly like the Richmond product, and I would not be surprised if the Richmond product actually is a copy of the British Ely. I took detailed measurements of the original bullet in my collection and handed those off to my good friend Steve Sheldon, who made a CAD drawing of the bullet, which we sent off to Lee Precision. The molds we received back make a perfect copy of the Richmond bullet, and I assume also the Ely bullet for that matter. The Gone Sharps molds I'm very pleased with. They come with handles and they're 2-cavity, and you can crank out a lot of bullets very quickly. To make the cartridges, I assembled these components and tools. Besides the bullets, you'll need a mandrel or dowel rod, paper, a glue stick or some type of adhesive, a way to cut the paper, which I used a paper cutter, powder measure, and also a template to mark out your cartridge envelopes. You want your mandrel to be slightly less in diameter than the heel of the bullet. And the bullet was 5.29, and so I took a 1/2-inch dowel rod and I used some tape, in this case aluminum tape, which I had on hand, and wrapped it around the dowel to get it up to the diameter that I needed. I found the aluminum tape works great because it's very slick. It's easy to take the bullet off, or the cartridge envelope off. And I made it 5.23, and which is, like I said, slightly less than 5.29, the bullet diameter. I used some heavy cardboard to make a template for the envelope papers. And these sizes I see here, which is 3 by 2.25 by 3.25, come right out of the Confederate Ordnance Manual for Sharps cartridge papers. And I can use this, I can lay it out on several layers of the paper, trace it off, and then cut them very easily. You can use scissors to cut these out, but I have a paper cutter, which works great. I can cut 5 or 6 layers at one time after I trace them out the template. And it doesn't take long to get all that I need for one session. I found this new type of glue stick. It's Elmer's Natural, and it purports to be 88% natural, with the 12% being the plastic casing. The glue itself is all plant-based. I assume it's cornstarch and other things like that. So I'm hoping it will burn better than the acrylic type glue sticks that are most common. So these are the papers we're going to use. And I'm going to do this so you can see the whole operation first, then maybe I'll come back and we'll get a close-up of some parts of it. I'm going to do a couple of the bullets in the paper envelopes, and I'll come back and show you how to do the charging and folding here in a few minutes. But we'll just do a couple envelopes first. Now here's my paper. You'll see a long straight edge, a short straight edge, and a slanted edge. This will be the end that turns into the tail. And we want the narrow end there because we want less paper to have to tear. And then the long edge is where the bullet will be pasted in. And we want more paper there to offer more stability in the cartridge. And we're also going to paste the long slanted edge. And that's what's going to seal the envelope of the cartridge. So the first thing I'll do is run a bead of glue stick along this edge, the long straight edge, and then up the slanted edge. And I'll put my dowel rod in. And remember, this dowel rod, I've increased the diameter by putting some tape on it. In this case, aluminum tape. It seems to do very well. Stays on great. And I'm going to leave just enough room at the end in there to allow my heel of the bullet to fit. And then I'll just very slowly roll this up. And that's all there is to it. See, it's all on there. I'll just give it just a minute for the glue to set. And then I'll pull that off and set it aside to let the glue cure. And you notice I'm running the paper right up to the bottom edge of the drive band, to the top of the heel. And I'm going to use all that space I can, that surface area on that heel, to allow the paper to attach and glue on properly. Now let's do another one real fast. Pull another paper out, and I will glue the top edge where the bullet's going to be, the slanted edge that will hold our envelope together. And I'll get the mandrel started and leave just enough space for that heel, which is about 1/4 inch. I'll make sure the paper fits right up underneath the drive band, and then make sure it's square and very slowly roll it on. And that's all there is to it for making these envelopes and bullets. If it's not absolutely perfect on the edge, it's not a big deal, but you don't want to go over the drive band if you can help it. Now we'll pull that off and we'll let that cure. So we're going to load a cartridge now, and we're going to load it with 45 grains. And I've determined already that that's all that my Garrett Sharps will hold behind this specific bullet. And if I put any more than about 45 grains, it'll just be wasted when I scissor off the back of the cartridge when I shut the breech. So we'll stick with 45 grains. Now I'll measure that out of a flask into my mold, or excuse me, my measure. And I'll probably spill a little bit here, but all is good. And I will charge that inside the case. These cases have been, the glue's been curing for about 45 minutes. And I'll settle it a little bit. Now I'm going to look for the diagonal seam on the side of the cartridge envelope, and I'm going to try to capture that inside the fold. It's not absolutely imperative, but it will just be another proof that it won't leak any cartridges. It'll be much more secure. So there's my seam. Now I will squeeze the cartridge down. I know it's hard to do this, and you see what I'm doing. Down to the top of the powder. Just flatten it. Okay. Now I will turn it 90 degrees. You see what I'm doing there. Now I'm going to take each side of that tail and I'm going to fold it in to the center. And I'll crease it with my fingers as I do so. There's the first half. Now I'll fold in the second half, or other side I should say. Okay, and there is the folded cartridge, and that'll prevent any powder from getting out. Now I will fold it back on itself. I'll crease it there, and I can even pound it a little bit on this hard surface to flatten it and tighten it a little bit more. Then I will fold it one more time on the side just so the tail will lay against the side of the cartridge. Now, I'm not sure if you can see that, but that is one prepared cartridge. Now I'll do all these, and when I load these into the carbine, the bullet will be stopped by the forcing cone as it goes in, and just the tail on this will be sticking out of the breech, and when I close the breech on the carbine, it will scissor off the tail, and then when I put it in, I'll make sure the tail is sticking out. And that's the way all of these folded tail cartridges were loaded into the carbine at the time. In 1859, as I mentioned before, they came out with the new Sharps, and with a newly developed cartridge that was flat on the base and that took up just the amount of room inside the chamber, so it would not be scissored by that breech. But all the folded tail cartridges, which were actually used up through the end of the war, especially by the South, that breech will cut off the end of the tail. And we'll do one more real quickly. I'll measure my 45 grains. Now in your Pedersoli or your Chiappa carbine, you may be able to get a little bit more powder. The Garrett has a shorter chamber than most of the other reproductions. I'll pour that in, settle it just a little bit. I'll find my diagonal seam and I'll put it in the middle of my fold. There's the flattened tail. Bend it over 90 degrees. And then fold in each side. There's the first one. And there's the second. And then fold it back on itself. And by the way, this is the same fold that's used on musket cartridges and early pistol cartridges. And I mean, this type fold has been used for paper cartridges for eons. It was nothing new for the Sharps. And there's our completed cartridge. The original cartridges were lubricated. They could have been, bullets could have been pan lubed and then assembled, or dip lubed after they were assembled. And that's what I chose to do, mainly because I feel that if they were pan lubed, there may be the grease left on the heel of the bullet may prevent the paper from sticking properly when I glued it together. So at any rate, these are dipped down to the groove, almost to the top of the paper. And I'm using an Ordnance lube, which is 8 parts beeswax and 1 part tallow. Of course, we have to show how the cartridges were loaded into the carbine. Pushed in with the finger with the breech open, the tail out, and then the breech just scissored off the rear of the cartridge. Now we're holding this at an angle so you can see better, but normally if the muzzle is closer to the ground or pointing down to the ground, you'll keep most of that powder inside. You see a little bit comes out when we scissor it off. That can be minimized by holding it more vertically. Well, thanks for watching. I hope to do a range follow-up with this in a few weeks. I'm healing from some shoulder surgery right now, so it'll be a few weeks before I can get to the range. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative for you. Please visit our website. I'll put the URL in the description of this video. You can see all the bullet molds that we have to offer at Arrows Gone. Also, if you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe. We hope you come back and see another one sometime.